Okay, let's dive into something truly incredible today. Have you ever really stopped to think about the sheer power of your own imagination?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like this hidden workshop inside all of us. It's
Mm.
where everything we eventually bring into the world, from a simple idea for dinner to a massive project, first gets kind of dreamed up, hammered out, given some shape.
It absolutely is the birthplace of action. That's where those initial sort of intangible sparks, desires, impulses,
Yeah.
they finally get the form and structure they need to actually move towards becoming real.
And that potential, that whole process, that's what we're focusing on today. We're pulling our insights straight from Chapter 7 of Think and Grow Rich.
Right. That chapter really zeroes in on imagination. It sees it as a absolutely crucial step if you want to turn those intangible desires into, well, tangible results like money, which is the book's focus.
Exactly. So our mission here is to really unpack the core ideas from this chapter. Figure out how this mental workshop functions, according to the source, and look at some real-world examples they give. See how it's been a key ingredient in building some pretty impressive fortunes.
Yeah, some amazing stories in there.
Totally. And as we explore this, I really want you, our listener, to be thinking about your own imagination. Like, where does it show up for you? Are there ways you could be putting it to work more deliberately? Because this chapter really suggests it's a power available to everyone.
It's often right there, just waiting to be used more consciously, isn't it?
So the source gets right into it. It describes imagination literally as the workshop of the mind.
It's a bold claim, definitely, but it's foundational to the whole book's premise. It states, pretty directly actually, that we can create anything that we can imagine.
And when you look back, especially at recent history, well, it's kind of hard to argue with that power. The source points out that in just the last 50 years or so, our collective imagination has let us discover and harness way more of nature's forces. Think about, space travel, computers, genetic engineering.
Right, more than in all of previous human history combined. It's staggering.
It really is. But here's the kicker. Despite all these incredible leaps, the text suggests we're still, kind of just scratching the surface. We're using our imagination in a very elementary way.
Yes, as the only real limitation, within reason, is simply how much we choose to develop and use it. There's just so much untapped potential there.
That's fascinating. Okay, so how does this workshop actually operate? The source breaks it down and says there are two distinct forms.
That's right. It talks about synthesized imagination and creative imagination.
Okay, let's start with synthesized. What exactly is that?
Synthesized imagination, according to the source, is mainly about arranging old concepts, existing ideas, maybe plans you already know, into new combinations.
Ah, okay.
So it doesn't really create something totally out of the blue. It works with the raw materials you've already got stored up. Your experience, your education, everything you've observed.
Okay, so it's like taking building blocks you already possess. You see a brick, you see mortar, you see an archway someone else built, and you figure out how to combine them maybe in a slightly different way to make something new.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. It's presented as the faculty that most inventors, most business people, really rely on for creating practical plans and products.
Makes sense.
And there's a useful little note from the editor in the version we're looking at here.
Oh, yeah. About the word synthesized.
Right. Because today, synthetic can sometimes sound artificial, fake.
Right.
But the editor points out that in this context, back when the book was written, synthesize just meant made up from component parts.
Ah, okay. Like putting existing parts together.
Exactly. Which is a much clearer way to think about what this faculty does. It's combining existing elements.
That distinction is helpful, yeah. So if synthesized imagination works with what's already there, what about the other form, creative imagination?
Okay, this one's presented as something a bit different, more direct, maybe even a little mystical sounding. It's described as the faculty for direct communication with what the source calls infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence. That definitely sounds more abstract. What's the idea behind that?
Well, the book describes it as the source of genuinely basic or new ideas, hunches, inspirations, things that don't necessarily seem to come directly from just rearranging your existing knowledge.
Okay.
It's like the wellspring for truly original thought. Yeah. And it also suggests this faculty is how we might pick up on vibes, or maybe even communicate with the subconscious minds of others. though it does say that's explored more later in the book.
Okay, so whether you take infinite intelligence literally, or maybe see it as tapping into some deeper level of pattern recognition or collective unconscious, the core idea is it's the source of those truly original flashes of insight.
Precisely. And the source emphasizes something important here. This creative imagination, it seems to work automatically, but only when the conscious mind is really humming. Energized, highly motivated.
Driven by strong desire.
Especially driven by strong desire. Yeah. That intense passion seems to kind of open the channel, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense intuitively. You think about times you've been totally obsessed with solving a problem or really passionate about a project. Ideas just seem to bubble up, right?
Exactly. And this, the source argues, is how the greats did it. Great leaders, artists, musicians, poets, writers, they became great partly by developing this receptive, creative imagination.
So you've got synthesized imagination, brilliant at rearranging what you know, and creative imagination, tapping into potentially brand new insights, often sparked by that intense desire.
And what's really interesting, maybe the most practical point here, is how seamlessly they actually work together.
They're not totally separate in practice.
No, the editor makes a great point about this. They're both equally valuable, and they often blend so completely, it's hard, maybe even impossible, to tell where one ends and the other begins.
No, okay, so it's not really about picking one or the other. It's more about just getting the whole faculty working.
Exactly. Think about the example they give.
Yep.
Jeff Bezos and Amazon. When he first combined the, burgeoning internet trend with the very old concept of selling books, was that synthesized imagination, taking existing ideas, technology, retail models, and just combining them.
Seems like it, yeah. He was definitely drawing on existing stuff.
But then was the specific choice to start with books, of all things, or even the name Amazon? Was that maybe more of a creative hunch, a flash of inspiration, maybe fueled by his desire coming from that deeper creative level?
It could easily be both, couldn't it? It feels like the point isn't to rigidly categorize it.
That's what the editor concludes, and I think it's spot on. It doesn't really matter which faculty is primarily at work in any given moment. The magic, the important thing, is the act of using your imagination, whichever form it takes.
Just activate it. Get it working.
That's the crucial takeaway. Just use it. And the source says something really encouraging here, too. It says, like a muscle, both synthesize and creative imagination get more alert, more receptive, the more you use them.
Oh, interesting. So even if you feel like yours is a bit rusty.
Yeah, even if you feel it's weak from lack of use, you can revive it, you can strengthen it, just by deliberately exercising it. Start putting it to work.
Okay, so how does this mental workshop with its two forms actually become the bridge between that initial intangible desire and the tangible result? Specifically wealth, which is the book's focus.
Well, as the source explained it, desire starts out as just a thought impulse. It's nebulous, abstract, right? It doesn't really have any physical form or practical value until you transform it into its physical counterpart, like money.
Okay, and imagination is the key tool for that transformation.
Exactly. Now, while both forms can play a part, the source suggests you'll probably use synthesized imagination most frequently in this specific process. Why? Because turning desire into tangible results usually requires plans. Definite plans.
Right. You need a roadmap.
And making those detailed plans, that roadmap, relies heavily on drawing from your experience, your education, your observations, all the stuff synthesized imagination work with.
Oh, okay. So synthesized imagination is what gives your desire shape, form, and ultimately action by helping you build the actual blueprint, the plan.
Yes. And there's a very specific, very crucial instruction the source gives right here. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful and says, put your plan in writing.
Just writing it down.
Yeah. Think about it. The moment you write it down, you're giving it physical form right there, aren't you? It's not just floating around in your head anymore.
True. It becomes concrete.
It really does. The source is very direct about this. It says, the moment you commit your plan to writing, you have definitely given concrete form to your intangible desire. It even suggests you read that specific sentence aloud.
Really? Which sentence?
This one. The moment I put my plan in writing, I will have definitely given concrete form to my desire.
Okay, let me try that. The moment I put my plan in writing, I will have definitely given concrete form to my desire.
Huh. Saying it aloud, it does feel different. It feels like a commitment.
Exactly. It's not just a fleeting thought anymore. It's down on paper or on screen, something you can actually see, refer back to, work with, refine.
It's like the first real step in transmuting that thought into reality.
That's exactly how the source presents it. And it backs this up with some incredible examples of fortunes built on these kinds of imaginative plans, often based on synthesizing existing knowledge.
Like the classic example, Thomas Edison and the light bulb. The source holds that up as a prime example of synthesized imagination at work. Oh, it's a perfect case study. Edison started with something everyone knew. You could heat a wire with electricity until it glowed and produced light. Simple enough.
The problem,
It burned out almost instantly.
right, the intense heat just destroyed the filament, so it wasn't practical. Everyone was kind of stuck there.
So how did Edison break through?
Well, he tried thousands of different materials for the filament, that's well known. But the real breakthrough, according to this analysis, didn't just come from more trial and error. It came when he applied another, seemingly unrelated common fact, how charcoal is made.
Charcoal. How does that connect?
Well, how do you make charcoal? You basically smother a wood fire with soil, right? You limit the oxygen to control the heat and stop it from burning up completely, turning it into charcoal instead.
Okay, yeah. The soil limits the air, controls the burning.
Exactly. Edison synthesized this knowledge. He had this aha moment. Maybe he could control the heat in the wire filament by putting it inside a vacuum, essentially removing the air, like the soil smothering the fire.
So put the filament in a glass bulb, pump out the air. And that's what he did. He created a vacuum inside the bulb,
Right.
ran current through the filament, and produced the first practical incandescent light that burned for, I think it was 8.5 hours initially.
That's incredible. And the source makes the point, doesn't it, that the key pieces of knowledge, heating a wire, making charcoal, creating vacuums, none of those were Edison's unique inventions.
Not at all. They were widely known principles or techniques. His genius, his imaginative leap, was in synthesizing that existing knowledge in a completely novel way to solve that persistent problem of the filament burning out.
And that synthesis changed the world and made him wealthy. It's such a powerful illustration.
It really is, and it perfectly demonstrates what W. Clement Stone later called the R2A2 formula.
R2A2.
Yeah. Recognize, relate, assimilate, and apply. Recognizing existing facts or principles, relating them in a new way, assimilating that connection, and then applying it to solve a problem or create something new. It's about looking at familiar things and combining them differently.
Recognize, relate, assimilate, apply. That's actually a really useful framework for deliberately using synthesized imagination.
Definitely. And the editors of the edition we looked at add even more modern examples that show this exact principle at work. You know, taking an idea from one area and applying it somewhere totally different, often in a way that seems simple in hindsight, but creates huge value.
Like Ruth Handler and the Barbie doll. That's a classic.
Absolutely. She saw her daughter playing with paper dolls, dressing them up, imagining scenarios. She combined that simple observation with her husband's existing toy manufacturing business.
And came up with
The idea for a three-dimensional, lifelike teenage fashion doll that kids could actually dress up in real clothes. She synthesized those two elements. And people told her she was crazy. They said no mother would buy their daughter a doll with, adult features.
But she persisted with that imaginative combination. And look what happened.
Exactly. Or think about some of the retail examples we touched on earlier. Jeff Bezos combining bookstores with the internet for Amazon.
Pierre Amador combining auction houses with the internet for eBay.
Simple combinations, right? Seem totally obvious now. But someone had to make that imaginative connection first.
Mary Kay Ash combining the idea of women running their own businesses with the existing model of direct door-to-door sales.
Anita Roddick seeing the trend towards natural ingredients and applying it to cosmetics to create the Body Shop. Bernard Marcus and Arthur Blank looking at the efficient layout and scale of a supermarket and thinking, hey, why not apply that to hardware? Boom, Home Depot.
And Thomas Stenberg and Leo Kahn doing pretty much the same thing, but applying the supermarket concept to office supplies with staples.
What all these stories really underline is that the most valuable, world-changing ideas aren't always the most complex or technologically advanced. Very often, they're the result of imaginatively combining existing concepts in a new way that meets a previously unmet need or meets an existing need much better.
They were ideas that maybe anyone could have had. But it took that spark of imagination to actually make the connection and then, crucially, put it into practice.
That's the key,
Yeah.
making the connection and acting on it. So yeah, simple ideas, imaginatively synthesized and executed, can absolutely be the starting points of massive fortunes. The source really hammers this home. It says, ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes, and they are products of imagination.
That it contrasts this, doesn't it, with the common belief that just hard work and honesty alone will automatically bring wealth.
Right. It argues that while those are important, riches in huge quantities usually come from combining hard work with definite principles, definite plans, and imagination. It's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter, fueled by imaginative ideas.
The story of the enchanted kettle, which is basically the origin story of Coca-Cola, is such a fantastic illustration of how imagination can turn a potentially small, simple idea into a global phenomenon.
Oh, it's a great story. So back in the late 1880s, there was this old doctor, John Pemberton, who had invented a formula for a nerve tonic, basically. He had the recipe, an old kettle he mixed it in, and a wooden paddle. He ended up selling the whole lot to a young drug clerk named Asa Candler.
For how much, again?
For $500, which was apparently Candler's entire life savings at the time.
Wow! $500 for an old kettle and a secret recipe. That sounds like a massive gamble.
It absolutely was. Pemberton, the doctor, clearly had no idea of the real potential in what he was selling. Candler took a huge chance. But the source argues that the true miracle wasn't just in the secret instructions Candler bought.
What was it then?
The miracle began, the source says, when Candler mixed in a key ingredient the doctor knew nothing about: his own imagination.
Ah, he saw something more than just a recipe for a tonic.
Exactly. Candler's imagination saw the possibility of a vast empire, a universally enjoyed beverage where the doctor just saw a formula in an old kettle. And just look at the incredible outcome.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. A worldwide empire. It created fortunes for distributors, massive demand for sugar, bottles, cans, generating countless jobs.
Yeah, employing armies of workers, clerks, advertisers, artists, factory workers. It literally transformed the city of Atlanta. Its influence spread to nearly every civilized country, and the profits even funded a prominent university.
And all of that, fundamentally, stemmed from a single, relatively simple formula combined with the imaginative vision and drive of one person.
That's the point the source drives home. This vast empire grew from one idea, ignited by imagination. And it says, your own ideas, combined with your imagination, have the potential to duplicate this kind of success. It's a powerful thought.
Okay, let's look at a few more of these compelling stories that the source uses. Colonel Sanders and KFC.
Right. Harlan Sanders. He had a successful motel and cafe, famous for his fried chicken recipe and his special method using a pressure cooker to make it fast and juicy. But then disaster struck.
The highway bypassed him.
Exactly. His business basically collapsed overnight when the new interstate went through elsewhere, and he was 62 years old at the time.
That's devastating, especially at that age. What did he do?
Well, instead of just retiring or trying to scrape together another little cafe somewhere, his magic ingredient kicked in again: imagination. He had the imaginative idea to sell his method, the recipe, plus the pressure cooker process by franchising it to other restaurants.
So instead of selling chicken, he started selling the system for making the chicken.
Precisely. He used his imagination to reframe his core asset. It wasn't the building, it was the process. That's a huge imaginative leap, especially for someone his age facing ruin.
And it wasn't easy at first, was it?
No way. It required immense perseverance. The story goes he drove around sleeping in his car, pitching his idea. He apparently only sold 5 franchises in the first 2 years.
Wow. That takes belief.
It really does. But the idea, fueled by his imagination and persistence, eventually caught on and then exploded. Hundreds, then thousands of KFC locations. The success wasn't just the tasty chicken. It was the imaginative business model of franchising the process.
Debbie Fields of Mrs. Fields Cookies is another great example of someone being told their idea was just plain crazy.
Absolutely. Here's a 20-year-old housewife, no real business experience, but she had a great chocolate chip cookie recipe. Her imaginative idea was actually incredibly simple: sell fresh, hot, soft cookies right out of the oven from a walk-up storefront.
Sounds good to me, but people didn't think so.
Apparently not. Business people, bankers, they laughed at her. They told her it would never work, that people wouldn't buy cookies that way.
But she didn't listen. She managed to get a loan somehow and opened her first store.
She did. And then, when it didn't work initially, the story goes, she didn't sell a single cookie on the first morning. She didn't give up. She used more imagination. She took a tray outside and started giving cookies away as free samples.
Ah, let people taste how good they were.
Exactly. That imaginative tactic worked. People loved them, word spread, and the business took off. Her methods, born from that simple idea and imaginative problem solving, are now apparently studied as a case study at Harvard Business School.
Incredible. Then there's Wally Amos of famous Amos Cookies. Similar product, but different imaginative angle, right?
Yeah, Wally Amos had a slightly different background. He was a talent agent in Hollywood. He'd personalized a family cookie recipe and started using the cookies as kind of a calling card, giving them out to clients and contacts. His imaginative idea was, hey, maybe I should just quit show business and sell these cookies.
And he used his show business background and how he marketed them.
Totally. Imagination combined with Hollywood flair. He opened his first store on Sunset Boulevard with a big party, red carpet invitations, celebrities. He put his own picture on the bags, made it feel exclusive, got them into high-end department stores. It was that imaginative approach to selling a simple product like cookies that built a multi-million-dollar business.
Okay, how about Ray Kroc and McDonald's? He didn't invent the hamburger.
Oh, no, not at all. He was over 50, selling milkshake mixing machines. He heard about these two brothers, the McDonald brothers, who had this incredibly efficient hamburger stand out in California. Kroc went to see it.
And what did he see?
He saw more than just good, cheap burgers. He saw the system, the efficiency, the assembly line process they called the speedy service system. And he had the imaginative idea not just to sell them more milkshake mixers, but to franchise that entire operational model himself across the country.
So again, it wasn't just the product, it was the imaginative application of a system.
Precisely. It was the recipe, plus the griddle, plus the efficient process, plus Kroc's imagination to see the massive, scalable potential in that operation. His imagination paid off in, well, billions and billions sold.
And Howard Schultz bringing Starbucks to the U.S.
Another great example of synthesized imagination, taking an idea from one context and applying it to another. Schultz was a marketing director for a small Seattle company that imported and roasted coffee beans. He took a business trip to Italy.
And saw the coffee bars in Milan.
Exactly. He saw the vibrant culture around the coffee bars there, the community, the ritual, the quality espresso drinks. And he had the imaginative idea. Why not try to transpose that whole experience, that culture, to Seattle?
Bringing a whole cultural experience from one place and imaginatively applying it to a completely different market.
Yes. And it wasn't easy. He apparently had to work hard to convince his company initially and eventually ended up buying them out to pursue his vision. But that vision, born from observing something elsewhere and imaginatively applying it back home, built Starbucks into the global phenomenon it is today.
The editors also include the story of Paul Newman and Newman's own salad dressing.
Right. He apparently started making his own salad dressing, gave it away to friends. Then he had the idea, with his friend A.E. Hotchner, to bottle and sell it. Simple idea, right?
Sounds simple, but he faced resistance.
Big time. He was told it wouldn't work without a huge personal investment, maybe $1 million, because celebrity food products almost always failed. The conventional wisdom was stacked against him.
So he needed more than just a recipe.
Absolutely. It required imagination and sheer perseverance to find unconventional partners who could see the possibility, like the supermarket owner Stu Leonard, who agreed to stock it. He had to figure out new ways of production and distribution because the established players weren't interested.
And the charity angle was part of that imaginative approach, too.
Definitely. Deciding to give all the profits away was a unique, imaginative twist that became central to the brand's identity and success. His imaginative approach to the product, the business model, and the marketing, coupled with sticking with it despite the naysayers, was key.
Looking at all these stories together, there's a really clear unifying thread, isn't there? It's imagination, often a simple idea, combined with incredible perseverance.
That's the powerful pattern that emerges. Simple, imaginative ideas put into action and then persisted with, often in the face of people telling you you're crazy or it'll never work.
And this brings us right back to the source's core message about how riches are actually created. It's not just from hard work alone.
Exactly. It's about transmuting those imaginative ideas into cash through definite purpose plus definite plans.
And imagination is the engine for creating those plans.
That's the connection. The story of Dr. Frank W. Gonzalez, the preacher who wanted to start a college, is presented as the perfect illustration of the absolute power of making that shift to definite purpose and acting on it.
Right. He saw issues in the education system at the time, desired to start a new college, but he needed $1 million, which was a huge sum back then.
And for nearly 2 years, the source says, he just sort of thought about it, hoped for it vaguely, wished for it, but made zero actual progress towards getting the money.
It's just wishful thinking. No definite plan, no definite action.
Exactly. Then came the turning point. The catalyst moment was simple but profound. He made a definite decision that he would get the money within 1 week. He stopped worrying about how he'd get it and focused entirely on the definite goal and the deadline. When?
Setting a specific goal with a non-negotiable time frame.
The moment he made that definite decision, the source describes him feeling this strange sense of assurance wash over him, like he knew it would happen. And then, crucially, he took definite action based on that decision. He announced he would preach a sermon the following Sunday titled, "What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million."
Okay, so a definite plan of action tied to the definite decision.
And the story goes that he was so worked up and inspired that when he got up to preach, he forgot his notes. But his subconscious mind, perhaps supercharged by that intense definite purpose, just provided the material.
He spoke from the heart about his dream, his vision for the college.
Exactly. And sitting in the congregation that day was Philip D. Armour, the wealthy industrialist. After the sermon, Armour came up to Gonzalez, impressed by his passion and vision. Within 36 hours of Gonzalez making that definite decision and taking the definite action of announcing and delivering that sermon, he had the $1 million.
Wow. From 2 years of nothing to getting it in 36 hours. That's incredible.
But the source insists it wasn't luck or chance. It came specifically in response to a definite demand, backed by burning desire, and acted upon with a definite plan. Gonzalez stopped being vague, stopped wishing, and said, "I will get that money within a week." And the source makes the point very clearly. This principle, this power of definite purpose combined with imaginative action, is still available to you today.
So it really highlights that synergy. The idea, the desire, yes, but it needs that definiteness of purpose and the action taken on a definite plan that imagination helps craft.
That seems to be the core formula presented. And as we've seen with so many of these examples, the most successful ideas, the ones that generate huge results, are often surprisingly simple and easily adapted. But, and this is the key, they require considerable imagination to first see the potential and then figure out how to put them into practical use.
Like Post-it notes. Talk about a simple idea born from a failure.
Right. A chemist at 3M, Spent Silver, was actually trying to create a super strong adhesive. Instead, he accidentally created the opposite. A very weak glue that was tacky but could be easily peeled off and repositioned. It was considered a failure, basically useless.
So the invention was shelved.
Pretty much. But Silver apparently kept demonstrating its odd properties within 3M for years, just kind of persevering. Then another 3M employee, Arthur Fry, who sang in his church choir, was getting frustrated with his paper bookmarks falling out of his hymn book.
Ah, I see where this is going.
He had that eureka moment. He remembered Silver's failed weak glue and had the imaginative idea. What if I put that weak glue on the back of small pieces of paper? They'd stick as bookmarks, but peel off without damaging the page.
A simple, imaginative application of a seemingly useless product to solve a common problem. Brilliant.
Totally. But even that wasn't the end of the story, because initially 3M's marketing experts tried to launch it using conventional methods, and it failed. People apparently didn't understand the value proposition. Who would pay money for little bits of scratch paper?
So the initial marketing lacked imagination.
You could say that. Then other people within 3M added another layer of imagination. Instead of just trying to tell people about it, why not show them? They launched a campaign in Boise, Idaho, the Boise Blitz, where they just gave massive amounts of free samples directly to the intended users, secretaries, office managers, receptionists.
Let them experience the usefulness firsthand.
Exactly. Once people actually used them, they got hooked. They saw how incredibly useful they were. That imaginative marketing tactic, giving samples directly, completely turned around the product's fortunes. What looked like a failure became a global success story. Post-its are everywhere now because of that simple imaginative application combined with imaginative marketing.
Velcro is another fantastic one, born from just simple observation meeting imagination.
Right. George de Mestral, a Swiss engineer and amateur mountaineer, was out walking his dog in the Alps. He noticed these annoying little burrs sticking stubbornly to his dog's fur and to his own clothes.
Something most of us would just curse and pull off.
Exactly. But de Mestral was curious. He took some of the burrs home and looked at them under a magnifying glass. What did he see? Hundreds of tiny hooks that were catching onto the loops in the fabric and the dog's fur.
Okay, observation meeting scientific curiosity.
Which then led to that flash of imaginative inspiration. Wait a minute. If these burrs use tiny hooks to stick where you don't want them, why couldn't I make two materials, one with tiny hooks and one with tiny loops, so they'd stick together where I do want them?
A beautifully simple, imaginative leap based directly on observing nature. But again, the path wasn't smooth, was it?
Not at all. People apparently laughed at his idea. He struggled for years to find manufacturers who could figure out how to reliably make the tiny, strong hooks. The breakthrough apparently came partly by accident, discovering that nylon thread, when sewn under infrared light, naturally formed durable hooks.
So perseverance was absolutely critical again.
Immensely. Simple observation, imaginative application, years of perseverance through doubt and technical challenges, and finally even an imaginative name combining the French words for velvet, velour, and crochet.
Velcro.
The Sony Walkman, too. That came from imaginatively reframing a failed product, right? Yeah, it's another great example. Sony engineers had apparently designed a prototype for a small portable tape recorder called the Pressman, intended for journalists. But it couldn't record well on standard cassettes at that size, so it was largely considered a failure for its intended purpose.
But people were using it anyway.
The chairman of Sony, Masaru Ibuka, noticed that some engineers were actually using these little failed recorders just for playback, listening to music on flights, for example. They just wanted a small, portable music player.
They didn't care about the reporting function.
Exactly. Ibuka made the imaginative connection. He thought, what if we take this small playback mechanism, strip out the recording part entirely, and combine it with those new lightweight headphones another division was developing? They hadn't created a failed recorder. They'd accidentally created the basis for a revolutionary personal stereo listener.
That imaginative reframing, seeing it not as a bad recorder but as a potentially great player and combining it with another existing technology,
launched the Walkman and completely transformed how people listen to music worldwide. Huge success from seeing potential where others saw failure.
Clarence Saunders and the Piggly Wiggly grocery store, another case of applying an idea from one context to another.
Right. He was working as a grocery clerk and apparently saw how efficient self-service cafeterias operated. He had the imaginative idea. Why not apply that self-serve concept to a grocery store? Let customers walk through aisles, pick their own goods, and pay at the end.
And people thought he was crazy.
Of course. The established wisdom was that customers needed clerks to fetch everything for them. He was told it would never work. But he quit his job, raised the money somehow, and opened the very first self-serve grocery store, Piggly Wiggly, in 1916. Revolutionized the industry.
And then Sylvan Goldman, who owns some Piggly Wiggly stores, made another simple imaginative leap based on observation.
Yeah, he noticed customers would stop shopping once their handheld baskets got too heavy or full. He watched them struggling.
And had the idea for
the shopping cart. His first version was literally a folding wooden chair with a basket on the seat and wheels added to the legs. Such a simple, almost obvious idea once you see it, but it solved a real customer problem, he observed, and it had a massive impact on how much people could buy.
The source uses these, and stories like F.W. Woolworth creating the 5 and 10 cent store concept from observing a successful 5-cent clearance table.
Right. Another simple idea, imaginatively scaled up.
And Sam Walton building Walmart by applying imagination to store layout, logistics, buying direct from manufacturers, profit sharing for employees, discounting brand names.
Yeah, Walton didn't invent discount retailing, but he applied imagination to perfecting the system and the culture, combining lots of existing best practices with his own innovations and relentless focus on efficiency and the customer.
And the source notes how older, established retailers who maybe ran out of imagination were overtaken by innovators like Walton.
Exactly. Then there's David Gold and the 99-cents only stores. He inherited his father's liquor store and noticed that items priced at 99 cents seemed to sell particularly well.
A simple observation about pricing psychology.
Which led to the imaginative idea. What if everything in the store cost exactly 99 cents? It was reviving a very old concept similar to Woolworth's, but applying it in a new context. Again, people told him he was crazy, that he'd never find enough quality suppliers willing to sell goods cheap enough to make it work.
But he needed imagination, not just for the store concept, but for the sourcing too.
Absolutely. He had to imaginatively figure out how to find closeouts, deals, special runs from manufacturers to stock his stores profitably at that single price point. He took a simple, almost discarded idea and revived it with fresh imagination and rigorous execution.
So the core lesson running through all these diverse examples seems crystal clear. Simple ideas, things easily adapted or observed, can genuinely be worth millions, but only when you apply your imagination to see their potential and figure out the practical steps to put them to work.
And the source ends that the creator of the idea basically sets the price, especially if they're smart enough to see its value and perhaps partner with others who can help implement it.
Right. It briefly touches on the value of surrounding yourself with people whose skills and imagination complement your own, mentioning how Andrew Carnegie built his empire by having men around him who were great at generating ideas and others who were brilliant at putting those ideas into operation.
It's about synergy. And the source, Napoleon Hill himself, shares his own story as perhaps the most personal proof of these principles. He says his own favorable break was meeting Andrew Carnegie, who planted the seed, the idea of organizing the principles of achievement into a practical philosophy of success.
So Carnegie gave him the initial idea, the spark.
Yes, but Hill emphasizes that the idea or the break alone wasn't nearly enough. That single idea required over 20 years of his own determined effort, absolute definiteness of purpose, and a burning desire. He uses the word obsession to research, organize, and bring that philosophy to fruition.
20 years, despite, face it.
Oh, disappointment, discouragement, periods of temporary defeat, lots of criticism along the way. It took that burning desire, fueling his imagination and providing the incredible resilience needed to persevere for so long.
It really underscores that ideas need champions with passion and persistence.
They absolutely do. Hill describes ideas themselves as these intangible forces, but incredibly powerful. He says, first, you give life and guidance to an idea through your imagination and your definite purpose. But then, if the idea is strong enough, it takes on a power of its own. It starts to drive you, sweeping aside opposition.
That's a fascinating concept. The idea becomes the driving force.
Yeah. Ideas, though intangible, can be more powerful than the brains that create them. And crucially, they can live on long after their creators are gone, continuing to influence the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 7 on imagination, the key takeaway seems undeniable. Imagination is truly the indispensable workshop for turning your desires into reality.
Yeah. Whether you're primarily using synthesized imagination, combining existing concepts in new ways, or tapping into creative imagination for those potentially brand new insights, both forms are vital. And the encouraging part is, like a muscle, they strengthen the more you deliberately use them.
And we saw that while hard work is, of course, essential, real fortunes, according to this source, are built on ideas. Simple ideas or complex ones, but ideas combined with a definite purpose, definite plans crafted by that imagination, and the sheer perseverance to see them through, especially when others doubt you.
And the crucial reminder is that the principles we've explored today, using imagination, setting definite goals, persisting, they aren't reserved for a select few geniuses. They're presented as being available to everyone, available to you.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawn from the source's perspective, consider everything around you, the physical world, the earth, the stars, the laws of physics, even your own body, your own thoughts. According to this philosophy, all of it began as some intangible form of energy or thought, just like your own desires.
Your imagination, then, is your faculty for tapping into this fundamental creative stuff of the universe.
So think about the simple observations you make every single day, the patterns you notice, the problems you see, the existing ideas or products around you. What imaginative combinations, what novel applications could they lead to if you really focused your imagination, applied definite purpose, and started crafting a plan?
That capacity you have to recognize, relate, assimilate, and apply your observations through your imagination. It holds immense, possibly untapped potential.
As the source advises, maybe go back, reread, study this material. Often, deeper layers of understanding and new personal insights emerge with each pass. Now, go put your imagination to work with definite purpose.